If you think about it, your life is a lot like a video game. You could say it's like a role-playing game most of all. All you need to do is add the right icons to your screen, like your health and energy bars. There's your inventory as well, with your phone, wallet, and keys in it. And of course, everyone's got a skill bar. But let's start from the very beginning. Even when you're a baby, the game difficulty is already set to hard. All your skills are at level 0, and your health bar is tiny, which is why you only sleep or eat most of the time to make sure it grows. When you reach level 1, you unlock the ability to walk. But the world map is still closed to you because there are lots of dangers you're just not ready for yet. It turns out, this game has a really long demo mode called Childhood. Most game features are locked for now. Nearly all of your actions are set for you by your parents. They're like quest givers who help you gain the experience you need to make progress. Ignoring their instructions can make leveling up real tough. But if you're polite enough, they'll give you your first gold coins. As long as you're a child, you'll constantly be leveling up. But of course, it takes a really long time. Your health and skill bars get bigger as you go to school. It's not the most exciting magic academy, but the students there still carry out quests and learn new abilities. Congratulations, you've reached level 18. Now we're really getting into this role-playing game. You're facing a classic video game choice. You have to select your character class and the skill path you like the most to help you conquer the world. While lots of games have different character classes, most of us end up being the same one in real life. The adventurer who travels the world doing different tasks to earn gold and experience. And you still have tons of quests to do. That's right, it's also time to leave behind the safe part of the map where you grew up. This unfamiliar world is a little like a dark forest full of enemies. The trouble is, the bad guys out there are sometimes hard to overcome. These monsters have names like responsibility, work, and money. They keep coming back even when you thought you'd finally learned how to deal with them. But if you didn't slack off at school, one day you'll overcome them all. Imagine you're in a restaurant and your date asks you if you like animals. You confidently reply, "I love cats." Your date sighs and says, "I'm more of a dog person." Quick, go to the menu, reload the checkpoint, and change your answer. Sorry, but you can't do that. Remember that this is one tough video game, and you're still playing on hard mode. This means that you only have one life. You can't just save and then go back if something goes wrong. Every decision and every action has consequences for you and the other players around you. But that just makes it more interesting. Interaction with other players is one of the most important parts of the game. But remember, you need to be a little careful here. The admins are a lot stricter than for other games. Breaking the rules and upsetting people could lead to a completely different game mode. And there isn't much to do in this version, except look at 4 walls and a grating on the window. On the plus side, the character customization in this game is fantastic. You can change your hairstyle and hair color, get tattoos and piercings, really anything you want. Oh, and the clothes? There's just no limit to the designer's imagination. With each new level you reach, you open up new abilities and new quests. You encounter tougher challenges, but get better rewards, like more gold or a bigger house. But there's one quest line that's really unique in this game. When you feel experienced enough, you can start a family and even create a new character. You'll transfer some of your skills to them and be their companion in the game until they're ready to go into the dark forest to fight the monsters on their own. You'll never get to control this character though. In this game, the plot isn't always about you. The AI does what it wants. There's a bunch of other stuff about this game that's really unusual as well. Let's take the graphics. They're just incredible, like Ultra HD. And the resolution is absolutely stunning. But the gameplay is pretty complicated compared to other games. You need to check your health bar all the time, build relationships with other characters, earn gold, and make sure you rest on time. But the story is the most interesting part. It's totally up to you what happens. Sure, it can be boring if you just lie on the couch and watch other people play, but try hard enough and your character could become really important. So you need to put the work in if you want it to be an interesting experience. But there are lots of cool things in other adventure games that are missing from this one. For example, fast travel. Imagine what it would be like if we had this option. You wake up tired, but you have to go to work. Just go over to the portal and select the right location. Boom! You're already there! I think it's definitely time someone invented this. And we could sure use some cheat codes as well. Of course, no one likes a cheater on the server, but imagine how cool it would be. Don't have enough money? Just type in the cheat and watch the numbers in your bank account double. Feeling sick? Don't waste your health potion, just use the cheat and your health bar is full again. But I've got to admit, playing it life like this would become boring. Imagining life as a video game helps us understand it a lot. A lot of what we do is about setting small tasks and looking for ways to accomplish them. With rewards and experience, you move on to more challenging quests. Your skills, gold, and health bars aren't infinite though, and you need to manage your resources carefully to reach the next level. Some people think that computer games can be really harmful. They say that gamers spend too much time in their virtual worlds and forget about reality. But there are actually a lot of benefits from playing games from time to time. Many of them are designed in the same way as our real lives, and they have plenty of features that teach us useful things. Games always reward us for our hard work. Playing a game from start to finish and making all that progress along the way can help you understand that it takes time and energy to get what you want. Hard work always pays off. Another useful thing that games provide is communication. Hundreds of millions of people play online games that bring them together in groups and teams. They have to achieve cohesion and use good teamwork to pass through a dungeon or win a match. Competitive games can help people learn to communicate and make compromises. And although it's all just for fun, this is exactly what we have to learn to do in real life as well. Only instead of a dungeon with a scary monster, we have to survive a day at the office with an angry boss. And one more thing. It's been proven that a person's strategic thinking and decision-making can improve when they play video games. In one experiment, a group of 50 young adults who had never played games before were asked to play an action game for 50 hours. Another group played a slow strategy game. The results showed that the action game helped to improve the young people's perception of visual information. Their decision-making skills also improved. This was thanks to the fast pace of the action game. In these kind of games, a large number of events happen one after another, forcing the player to act and make decisions. This can have an effect on people's real lives.
Have you ever seen the other side of the moon? I caught you. Of course not. But maybe you've seen it in photos. In that case, have you ever wondered why the two sides look so different? Well, let me tell you. We can't see the other side of the moon. People believe this is because the moon doesn't rotate around its axis. But this is not true. The moon does rotate. It just does it at the same rate as its orbital motion. This is a particular case of tidal locking called synchronous rotation. The first time we ever saw a far side was only in 1959, all thanks to the Soviet Luna missions and later the US Apollo program. Now, when Luna 3 and other spacecraft transmitted the first far-side images, they revealed a far more cratered hemisphere that looked more like Mercury or Jupiter's moon Callisto. It looked completely different from what we were used to, and that's when we learned how meh the other side is. No, seriously, just look at it. The near side can boast its thinner and smoother crust. These beautiful dark splotches are called lunar mare, the last remnants of ancient lava flows. And when I say ancient, I mean it. They're more than 3 billion years old. Meanwhile, the far side crust is thicker and crater-pocked. The lava flows had almost no effect on these impact craters. It's also devoid of any large-scale mare. Low-key looks like dried white cheese. To be honest, don't you agree that the nearby side is much more beautiful? Write your thoughts in the comments. So, only 50 years ago, we learned something about the apparent differences. But then the scientists discovered something weird. Both sides are different, even in the geochemical composition. And not only in this, our side was thinner than the far side by several miles. But where did such significant differences come from on an ordinary floating stone ball? For scientists, this was a mystery. They started coming up with a lot of theories. The melted moon theory was the main one for a while. It said that it was the Earth's fault that our moon looks like this. This happened several billion years ago. The moon was born because of a collision. One day, an object about the size of Mars crashed into the Earth. At that moment, a piece broke off from it, which later became the moon. However, this piece was somewhere 15 times closer to Earth than it is now. Some scientists created pictures of the so-called early moon. Unlike our cute little white ball, the early moon was a strange-looking, boiling scarlet ball. That piece didn't leave us after the separation. It became tidally locked very soon after. The Earth after the collision was still an incandescent nightmare, full of fire and lava. It was boiling at a temperature of 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And since the moon has always been turned toward us with one side, this side has melted down a little. This would explain why the moon's surface, the so-called mantle, is thinner on the near side than on the far side. During the boiling of the Earth, certain elements evaporated from it. They then settled on the moon. This would explain the difference in geochemical composition between the two sides. But there was a plot hole in this theory. If that's what happened, then where did rare foreign chemical elements come from, such as unusual isotopes of phosphorus, potassium, or tungsten? The nearby site is full of them, and they couldn't have come from the Earth. There were also other theories. Another one said that initially we had two teeny-tiny moons. Later they merged into a big one, hence the difference in their composition. But this theory sounds a bit crazy, and it has a plot hole too. For example, the transition between the two sides is way too soft. If our moon was actually two tiny moons, this transition would be more abrupt. So scientists were kind of at a loss on this one. But recently, they finally figured out what really happened to the moon, all thanks to NASA's Grail orbiters. They spent over a year whizzing around the moon, mapping it out, and studying its composition. Using this data, scientists have created around 360 computer simulations. They contain different impacting objects of many sizes, traveling at different speeds. Scientists were comparing the results with our current moon. They tried to determine which result was the closest to what we have today. And so, they finally solved this 50-year-old mystery. The answer lies in a collision with a dwarf planet. This collision occurred 4.3 billion years ago. This huge object was slightly larger than Ceres. For those who don't know, Ceres is one of the dwarf planets of our solar system. Its diameter is 580 miles. You could say that one France or one Germany would fit into it. So, this giant object crashed into the moon, somewhere near the South Pole. This collision was so strong that it changed the image of the moon forever. It left a trail of 3,500 miles behind. It would take you 14 hours by plane to fly that distance. This crater covered the entire near side of the moon. It caused damage to the moon's mantle. It also created a so-called South Pole Aitken Base, or SPA basin. This is an impact crater and has a diameter of 1,600 miles, which is like adding one UK plus one Germany. It's important though. The formation of this basin was a defining event in the history of the moon, and it's the second largest impact crater in the solar system. The collision also caused a powerful hot wave to spread across the moon. This wave scattered over the remnants of those rare warm minerals scientists found on the nearby side. That's how our beautiful side became home to something called Procellarum creep terrain, or PKT for short. This is basically a compositional anomaly, a concentration of potassium, phosphorus, and other rare elements like thorium. You can say that those minerals are a gift to us from deep space. Anyway, there were many, and I mean many, collisions in the moon's history. All of them only deepened this already large crater. That's why the mantle on the near side was getting thinner and thinner with the years. Also, our gifted minerals gave off a lot of heat, so the mantle has melted a little bit more and more. Oops, this accidentally caused the moon's volcanoes to wake up. Volcanic activity has increased on the near side. Intense lava flows fill the old empty craters. Ta-da! And this is how the beautiful lunar mare was born. That's about how it all happened. All this information was found thanks to the researchers from Brown, Purdue, Stanford Universities, and NASA's JPL. The research was published by the Journal of Geophysical Research, Planets, so you can read about it in more detail if you're interested. There are still many things we need to learn about the Moon. The highest priority is the return mission from the South Pole, the Aitken Basin. Samples brought from there will be used to determine the age of the Moon, its history, and the nature of the crust and mantle more accurately. Another critical target is the Moscovians. This is the name of a large lava plain on the far side of the Moon. Studying it will help us better understand the difference between the two sides, as well as tell us how the other side was formed. All this knowledge is significant for understanding the history of the Moon, but it's also handy for space exploration in general. Scientists use the Moon as a reference point to determine the age of other planets and entire worlds in space. The Moon helps us determine the chronology of the life of the whole solar system. So, stay tuned for new exciting research and discoveries.
An exoplanet is any planet inside our solar system. Some of them are free-floating. Those are called rogue planets. They move around the galactic center. Others orbit their host star, or two. For the first time, astronomers discovered exoplanets in the 1990s. Since then, scientists have found thousands of them. And now, you can sneak a peek too. Spoiler alert, some exoplanets are pretty bizarre. Others resemble our home planet and could probably support life. The closest to Earth exoplanet is Proxima Centauri b. It's a mere 4.2 light-years away from Earth. Recently, astronomers have found out that this world might resemble Earth even more than previously thought. It's only 17% more massive than our home planet. It orbits a star that is dimmer and less massive than the Sun. Proxima Centauri b is in the middle of the star's habitable zone. This means that chances are liquid water and life might exist on the planet. It looks like the exoplanet is tidally locked with its parent star. This means one of its sides faces the star at all times, and the other is always in the darkness. Scientists haven't figured out yet whether the planet has an atmosphere. It's traveling too close to its star and completes one orbit within 11 Earth days. The radiation from the star might be pulling the planet's air away. If this is the case, Proxima Centauri b isn't likely to have liquid water on its surface. Gliese 832c is 16 light-years away from Earth. In the cosmic scheme of things, it's a stone's throw away. This exoplanet is 5 times as massive as Earth and travels much closer to its parent star. That's why a year on this planet lasts a mere 36 days. But since this star is a red dwarf, much cooler and dimmer than the Sun, Gliese 832c gets as much light and heat as our planet does. At the same time, it's still unclear if Gliese 832c is similar to Earth. It probably has a much thicker atmosphere that creates a runaway greenhouse effect. This phenomenon occurs when a planet absorbs more heat from its host star than it can release back into space. This means that Gliese 832c is more likely to resemble scorching hot Venus rather than relatively cool Earth. Another Earth-like planet, TOI 700d, is 100 light-years away from us in the constellation Dorado. It orbits a small and rather cool dwarf star that is about 40% of the mass and size of the Sun. Its surface temperature is half as high as that of our star. The outermost planet, which is the very TOI 700d, is almost the size of Earth. It also sits in the habitable zone of its parent star. No flares from TOI 700 reach the planet. This increases the chances of the exoplanet being habitable. This means it can potentially develop and maintain life. Scientists don't know for sure the exact conditions on the surface of the planet, but one of the computer simulations they've created shows a planet covered with an ocean. It has a very dense atmosphere dominated by carbon dioxide. Astronomers think a similar atmosphere surrounded Mars when it was a young planet. But another 3D model shows TOI 700d as an all-land, cloudless world. That's what our Earth would probably look like if it wasn't covered with oceans. Winds on TOI 700d move away from the night side of the planet and meet in the area that directly faces the star. There is an exoplanet that stands out among the rest because of its awesome magenta color. You can find this world in the Virgo constellation. The planet is called Gliese 504b. The distance between this planet and its parent star is 9 times the distance between the Sun and Jupiter. The planet formed relatively recently and is still glowing with heat. That's why its surface looks pinkish. Just 20 light-years away from the Sun, which isn't such a great distance when we talk about space, a bizarre rogue planet is roaming our home Milky Way galaxy. But even though this planet doesn't orbit any star, it still has an incredibly powerful magnetic field. It's 4 million times stronger than Earth's magnetic field. The exoplanet also produces amazing auroras. When it was discovered in 2016, astronomers were almost sure they had detected a brown dwarf, which is an object too large to be a planet and too small to be a star. But later, scientists received proof that the space object wasn't big enough to be a brown dwarf. The planet sure is a mammoth among its peers. It's 1.2 times as wide as the largest planet of the solar system, Jupiter, and more than 12 times as heavy. Astronomers think the exceptional strong magnetic field helps the planet produce the auroras. But the most curious thing is that they're generated in a different way than auroras on Earth. It might be because the exoplanet's moon helps the planet create these light shows. If you traveled 20,000 light-years away from Earth, you'd come close to a red dwarf in the Sagittarius constellation. Such stars are very cool and small. Quite far away from this cold star, there's a planet. The distance between this world and its host star is so great that the planet receives very little heat. It's one of the coldest planets ever detected. The average surface temperature on the planet is lower than -360 degrees Fahrenheit. That's why the entire planet is covered with a thick layer of ice. If you stepped onto its surface, you'd see nothing but glaciers, plains, and mountains of ice. And still, astronomers claim life might exist deep beneath the frozen surface. All because the core of the planet is likely to generate enough heat to melt some of its inner ice. In this case, there would be an enormous subsurface ocean, maybe even swarming with bizarre life forms on the planet. One of the oldest exoplanets we know about is PCR B162026b. It's about 12.7 billion years old. It's almost 3 times as old as Earth, which appeared 4.5 billion years ago. This also means that the Genesis planet formed only about 1 billion years after the Big Bang. The planet is so old that its 2 parent stars have had enough time to evolve into a white dwarf and a pulsar, making almost 100 revolutions per second. Sunrises on this planet must look awesome. I bet the next exoplanet isn't like any other you might have seen before. It's often called Super Saturn or Saturn on steroids. That's because J1407b has a colossal system of rings. They're 640 times as large as those of Saturn. The bizarre world is 434 light-years away from Earth. It's the only planet we know about that has rings similar to Saturn's. If you moved J1407b to our solar system and replaced Saturn with it, its rings would look many times larger than a full moon. Astronomers have noticed a gap halfway through the planet's rings. The chances are high that an exomoon the size of Mars orbits the planet somewhere within this gap. If you lived on this moon, you'd have an awesome view every time you looked up into the sky. This exoplanet, called WASP-12b, munches on the light coming from its star. It's one of the darkest worlds people know about. All because its day side consumes light rather than reflects it back into space. The planet is giant, twice the size of Jupiter, and it traps more than 94% of the light that reaches its atmosphere. This is likely to be the main reason for the insane temperatures on the surface of the planet. They can rise up to 4,600 degrees Fahrenheit. It's almost half as hot as the surface of the Sun. WASP-12b travels so close to its host star that it needs just one day to complete one orbit. Its night side isn't as hot as the day side, a mere 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Because of this difference in temperature, water vapor and clouds gather above the surface of the planet. From time to time, swirls of material from the planet's superheated atmosphere spill onto its star. About 4,000 light-years away from Earth, there's an exoplanet that might be one enormous diamond. It's 5 times the size of our planet, but needs only 2 hours and 10 minutes to orbit its parent star. It's a pulsar rotating at a rate of 10,000 times a minute. The planet is denser than any other we've discovered so far. It consists mostly of carbon, which is so dense that astronomers think it might be crystalline. If it was true, it could mean that at least some part of the planet is diamond. On WASP-76b, it rains iron on the night side of the planet, and the temperature on the daytime side rises up to 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to vaporize most metals. This exoplanet is a bit smaller than Jupiter and located 640 light-years away from Earth. Such terrifying weather conditions in this world are caused by its unusual orbit. The distance between WASP-76b and its parent star is 10 times shorter than the distance between Mercury and the Sun. That's why the star and the huge planet are tidally locked. One side of WASP-76b always faces the star, and the other side is always pitch black. This bright blue exoplanet sits 62 years away from Earth. A bit larger than Jupiter, it looks calm and peaceful. Its blue color might remind you of our home planet. But this familiar appearance conceals the planet's horrifying nature. The beautiful hue comes from silicate atoms and particles that make up the atmosphere. But the wind speed on the planet can reach 5,400 miles per hour. That's 7 times the speed of sound. The temperature there can rise up to 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. But this isn't the worst. In this bizarre world, it rains glass, sideways. So it's probably not the place where you'd like to spend your vacation.